On May 15, 2008, in Sector 25 of Noida, a quiet residential apartment became the setting for India's most controversial unsolved double homicide. Behind the store lived four people, Dr. Rajesh Talwar and Dr. Nupur Talwar, both successful dentists, their 13-year-old daughter, Aarushi, and their 45-year-old live-in domestic worker, Hemraj. The evening followed a standard routine. By 9:30 p.m., the family had eaten dinner, and shortly after, all four occupants retired to their respective rooms for the night. This routine ended at dawn. On the morning of May 16th, Nupur Talwar entered her daughter's bedroom to find Aarushi dead on her bed. The physical evidence was precise. Aarushi had suffered blunt force trauma to her cranium, and her throat had been slit with surgical precision. When the local Noida police arrived, they noticed the domestic worker, Hemraj, was missing. His room appeared slept in, but empty. Investigators deduced the servant had committed the murder and fled. That immediate assumption created a cognitive blind spot. By locking on to the fleeing servant theory, the early investigators failed to properly secure or examine the immediate physical environment of the apartment. In forensics, the critical first step is securing the perimeter to prevent a Vectin Zero failure. The Noida police did not initiate this protocol. This map shows the apartment. By failing to seal the area, police allowed unauthorized individuals to traverse the primary scene, entering the bedroom. Rampant contamination rendered 22 of 24 collected fingerprint sets unfit for comparison. The suspected murder weapons were never recovered. The true cost of this negligence was revealed on the afternoon of May 17th. Police finally checked the locked terrace of the same building and found a second body lying in a pool of blood. It was Hemraj. He had been dead for roughly 24 hours. His injuries matched Aarushi's exactly: blunt force trauma and a surgically slit throat. This discovery invalidated the fleeing suspect hypothesis. The man police were hunting was actually a victim. Because the physical evidentiary matrix was destroyed within the first 48 hours, the foundation for a rigorous scientific inquiry was lost. The ensuing decade of litigation would be forced to rely on assumption rather than material fact. Recognizing the collapse of the local inquiry, the government transferred jurisdictional authority to the Central Bureau of Investigation, or CBI. The CBI is India's premier federal investigative agency. This diagram maps the investigative divergence that followed. The first CBI team focused on external suspects, tracing the remaining evidence to 3 domestic servants linked to the household and the Talwars' clinic. To gather information, Team 1 relied on psychological testing, subjecting the 3 men to polygraph tests, brain mapping, and narcoanalysis. However, under Indian evidentiary law, these specific tests are completely inadmissible in court. Lacking material evidence to corroborate the results, investigators were forced to release the suspects. In 2009, a second CBI team assumed control and built a different model. Instead of looking outward, Team 2 targeted the internal occupants, pointing the investigation directly at the parents. After months of analysis, this second team filed a formal closure report in December 2010. The report presented a paradox. It stated that while circumstantial indicators pointed at the parents, there was not enough physical evidence to support a formal conviction. It recommended the case be closed. The trial court judge rejected this recommendation. Despite the CBI's own admission of insufficient evidence, the judge legally ordered Rajesh and Nupur Talwar to stand trial for double murder. 2 premier investigative teams had looked at the exact same degraded data and reached opposite conclusions. It was a total collapse in standardized investigative methodology. By 2012, both parents were formally charged with murder, conspiracy, and the destruction of evidence. The prosecution's case was built on a circumstantial premise. They argued that because the apartment showed no signs of forced entry, only the parents had internal access to the victims that night. They also introduced the locked door theory. They deduced that because the terrace door where Hemraj was found was secured from the inside, only an internal occupant could have locked it after moving the body. Outside the courtroom, unregulated media coverage created an intense trial by public opinion. This narrative filled the vacuum left by the missing physical evidence. The press repeatedly framed the parents as uncooperative, constructing a presumption of guilt based on their public demeanor. The defense focused on the initial protocol failure, arguing that the T0 crime scene was too thoroughly contaminated for any subsequent physical analysis to be legally reliable. On November 25, 2013, the judge delivered a guilty verdict, sentencing both parents to life imprisonment. This conviction was a victory of circumstantial deduction and external media pressure over the strict constitutional requirement of material proof. After serving 4 years in prison, the Talwars appealed to the Allahabad High Court, nearly a decade after the original incident. In October 2017, the High Court completely overturned the trial court's judgment, acquitting the parents of all charges. The High Court found the prosecution's circumstantial evidence failed to cross the legal threshold to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The justices cited the initial crime scene contamination, as the missing physical data made it impossible to finalize the chain of evidence. The appellate court criticized the original trial judge for prioritizing circumstantial assumptions over empirical physical evidence. The court also noted that the CBI's first team had explicitly cleared the defendants, proving the existence of reasonable doubt within the state's own ranks. Following the ruling, the parents were released from prison, legally absolved of the crime. This appellate collection leaves a grim legal paradox. Because the conviction was overturned, the actual perpetrator of the double homicide remains legally unidentified and at large. The Aarushi Talwar case remains officially unsolved. The systemic failure to collect and protect physical data at T0 meant a definitive legal resolution could no longer be supported by material proof.